I'm Dr. Brandy Walthall. I work at the University of Central Arkansas in the Elementary Literacy and Special Education Department. And today we're going to be talking about highly effective practices in the inclusive classroom. My background is in early childhood special education, and having that early childhood special ed in kindergarten. I taught kindergarten for many years. And so I had to bring in that early childhood special ed into my kindergarten classroom. So I was doing a lot of that when the inclusive classroom was not yet a thing. But we do know, if we've been in education long enough, that everything rolls back around and becomes a new idea, right? So that is where a lot of my background and knowledge comes from. So that's where we're going to be talking today. So if I give any of my examples, that's where they'll come from. So if you hear me talk about my children or anything like that, they're going to be those young ones, because that's where my background comes from. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my slideshow so that we can get started. And please feel free, if I'm talking about something and you have a question. I am not one to be bothered by the fact of you interrupting to ask a question. So please just say, hey, whatever you need to, because I am here for you. All right. So here we are with the high leverage practices for inclusive classrooms. So I just want us to start off with seeing, hey, do we really know, are we here today? Well, where'd my little computer deal go there? It's hiding. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Where are you? There you are. So we're going to just see how much we actually know, and just see, do we know anything about high leverage practices? And so we're going to go over here. Let me move this out of the way so we can bring it up. This little bar up here is in my way too. In the circle of doom, 1 second. It's not being nice to me. What are you doing? You know, I had all these ready and everything, and you know, this is what happens. No, I don't want to leave. Come on. Well, we may go take a pretest. We may just decide that we don't need one because it's not acting like it wants to give us one. Oh, maybe. Let's try and see if it'll work now. Can everyone see the little pre-course there? If you went online and you did your the QR code, or you can do it from right here. I'm hoping that you're seeing it now. It's not running away like it was a minute ago. And we're just going to see how much knowledge that we have. It's just going to ask us a few questions here to just see if we have any knowledge of what these high leverage practices are. So what do you know about this topic? Give me 3 things that come to your mind when you think of high leverage practices. Do you have any idea, any words that come to your mind? If you didn't get to scan that code, if you'll go to Mentimeter.com you can type in this number right here, and it'll allow you to be a part of our
Oh, that's close.
and then let's rate your knowledge of how you feel. Are you feel like you're coming to this well prepared of knowing, or do you feel like you understand, pretty much the goals of what we'll have, or do you feel like you need to learn a lot about this topic? And this is the last one. It says, what is the one thing that you are looking forward to learning today in this workshop? And it may be that you have no clue what high leverage practices is, and you're like, I don't know what. I can't list anything because I have no clue. And that's okay. That's what I want to know. All right. So now we're going to go back to our slideshow here. And we're going to look at, because the first thing that I want to talk about is that it's very important for us to self-assess ourselves in saying what is important to us. Because as teachers, don't we tell our students a lot of times that, you need to constantly be self-assessing so that you are constantly being able to move ahead to see what progress you're making. Well, as teachers, we tell, it's kind of like those things you tell your real children, not your student children, do as I say, not as I do, because teachers are so full of things to do all the time that a lot of times we don't do it for ourselves. So I want us as teachers to get into the habit of making sure that we set positive goals for ourselves so that we can see the progress that we're making as teachers to better ourselves. Because what should our goal be? To be the best teacher that we can be. Because our students, no matter what year they are, no matter if they're an honor student, an average student, or a special needs student, we should always see progress no matter where they are or what they're doing. So today, we're going to look at what is our positive goal for this workshop. Now, I'm going to take a side note step here. And if you know me, you'll know that this is very much me. Because why did I say a positive goal? How many of you work with those people that when you see them walk down the hall, you want to run because you know what's going to come out of their mouth isn't going to be positive? How many of you know that you've got so many things to do and you've got so much going on in your life that you can't find something positive? This is what I want us to talk about for one moment, is the importance it's getting locked again. I hope y'all can hear me. Okay, good. We can. Well, give me a second so I can go to the next slide here because it sure is not wanting to. Oh, now look, now it's jumped like 4 ahead.
It's stuck on your what do you want to get out of this workshop? You may want to stop sharing and share again to see if
There
that,
again.
yeah.
Always not wanting to be nice to me. See, here's a perfect example. I could be very negative right now, and I want to say some very ugly negative words. Anybody else ever have that feeling? It's like you've worked so hard at something and you want it to go so perfect and it just doesn't want to. That is me right now. Come on. I brought my other technology with me just in case. So let's see if I can get it working. While we're sitting here waiting, my next question was going to be is that what do you think that your positive goal would be in your classroom? Because what these practices are going to be is how are you going to implement something in your classroom, and what kind of goal are we going to make for this workshop, whether you know something about high leverage practices or you don't. What is your goal? Notice positive goal going to be for this workshop. What are you going to get out of it today? So you be thinking about what your goal is and what you want to make your goal today.
While she's working on her presentation, I just want to say you will receive your email, participation email within the next 24 to 72 hours, but it's not a certificate, it's an email.
All right. All right. Did that help? Can you see it now?
It says you are sharing your screen,
Okay.
but it's not on your screen.
And there's not anything on there, right? I'm glad to see all y'all putting in your goal though. Thank you. Oh, look, we came back over here. Let's see if we can get it back going. All right, do we see Saturn now?
We see you.
You see me. Okay.
Yes.
So let, oh. Now let's see if it'll share it. Y'all cross your fingers. Now do you see the
We
pattern?
see it.
Yay, and I don't see the circle of doom, so maybe it won't get us this time. All right, so we left it. I was reading your goals for today while I was trying to get this set up. So let's just pray that no more circles of doom and we'll be able to move on. So notice we were talking about having that positive mindset. And so we do not want to have that negative attitude, not only for yourself, but for your students, and speaking those negative words about everything that we talk about. We want to constantly use those positive words. I was looking for a picture to go in my daughter's classroom, and it was so interesting to find that everywhere that I looked, it was like, when you walk into my classroom, you are, and then it had all these, you are special, you are kind, you are phenomenal, you are, and then it goes along with this, using those positive words of, I am able, it is possible, you can do it. Now, does that mean everybody's going to do it on the same level? No. Does that mean everybody's going to do it the same way? No. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today, is that everyone's accomplishments and everyone meeting the goal is not going to look the same. Because if everybody looked like me, and everybody acted like me, this would be a wild place. So we want to have every student meet their goal the way they are supposed to meet their goal. So we want to make sure that we disregard and ignore negative thoughts, because we don't want to be that teacher that's like, oh no, I've got that child, or oh no, I don't want to have to deal with that extra stuff. Because that's an attitude that we get a lot of times, is that I've got to do a lot of these extra things, high leverage practices. That just means I have more to do. No, it's good teaching. And you are able to be a good teacher. It is possible for you to be a phenomenal teacher because you are able. And that's what we're here today for. Okay, push the button, and now let's see if you're going, or you're going to sit there. So while I'm hoping that while I keep talking, that it's going to catch up with me so that we don't get in the circle of doom and keep going. But so I'm going to go ahead and start talking on the next slide, and hopefully it's going to catch up with us. But I just want to give us some ideas of how we can have a positive mindset. And that is that we make a plan for ourselves that we're going to be positive. We have a new school year coming up. It's kind of like a teacher's New Year's resolution. We need to make sure that we begin now saying, we're going to make a plan. We're going to put in action that we don't care whose name is on our list, that we're going to have a positive attitude. We're going to visualize that whatever goes on in our classroom, whatever our administrator tells us we have to do, even when we don't like it, that we're going to have a positive attitude because we are going to make it a successful outcome. And that even if it takes us reading at least one page of an inspiring book or a positive affirmation every day, we're going to watch movies that make us happy. Because a lot of times, if you're a parent, you definitely know that you're constantly giving to your children, to your family. And then when you walk in that classroom, you're giving to every one of those children. So every time you're giving. And that's a lot of times why we don't have that positive mindset anymore, because we don't have the energy to have a positive mindset. So give something to yourself to watch that movie that makes you happy. Sit with your back up straight so that you know that you feel good about yourself. Did you know that just doing that makes you feel better about yourself, holding your head up high? Think about the times in your life that you felt the worst. They're usually when you're sitting hunched down, when you're not taking care of yourself. Be proud of who you are and what you are, a teacher. I tell my students that I teach that they are superstars and that they are superheroes. Why? Because they have the ability to change the world. And that's what I'm telling you, is that you have the ability to change the world, and you've already been changing the world. And we're just going to look at things today that try to help you change the world and make it a better place and easier for you. So we're going to think positive and expect favorable results in situations, even if our current situation is not what we want for the long term. So in time, your positive mental attitude will help you position your life and situations and change them for the better. So I want us to take a moment and I want us to set one positive goal for us to accomplish. It can be for this workshop or it can be for our personal self. Because I know that it's very easy for me when things don't go my way that I can have a critical view of things. And this year, that is the goal that I've made for myself, is that the minute I start seeing something in a critical manner, that I'm shutting it down. Now, is anybody else going to know about my goal? Probably not, because the only person that can hold me accountable for that is me. So think about it right now and make a positive goal for yourself. And you don't have to share it with us if you don't want to, but if you have someone that you want to share it with to help you stay accountable, then feel free to do that. And I'm going to try to get this to move forward again. Ashley, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm going to sign out of this one. I'm going to go on to my iPad and see if I can get it to come up there, because it's still, I don't know what this computer is doing. I mean, it's brand new, so I don't know why it's doing this. I'm going to see
Okay,
if it will help. So when you see me go off, don't freak.
okay.
Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I just sent you I just shared my slideshow with you.
Okay, I can see if I can pull it up if you want.
Thank you.
Can you see me?
Yes. Now just go to the next one.
The next slide. Is that
Yes,
it?
that is it. So we're actually just going to skip this one because that's where we were going to do the goal and we just typed it into the deal. So just head to the next one. There we go. So if you want to go up there and put it in slideshow, then all you'll have to do is click the arrow from then on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what do you want to get out of this workshop? If you'll click the arrow, we'll go and it'll tell us our goal
That's
on your keyboard. If you'll just put an arrow. Yep. So the goal that I made for us is that we're going to be introduced. In other words, I'm just going to tell you the 22 high-level practices that they've named. Promise you we're not going to go over all those. So don't inhale too much and get worried. However, we're going to target on 9 of the most important elements, not the whole practice, but just elements from 4 different sections to gain more knowledge to help our students. And so the areas that we're going to look at are differentiated instruction, collaborative learning, explicit instruction, scaffolded support, formative assessment, positive behavioral supports. And then we're going to just skim over universal design for learning. And then we're going to see technology integration and then reflective practice. So our first section is, and I'm just going to read through these. So if you'll just keep pushing, Ashley, we're just going to go through them all. So collaboration of high leverage practices. We have collaborating with colleagues to increase student success. Lead effective meetings with professionals and families, and then collaborate with families to support student learning and secure needed services. For section 2, here's where we were talking about earlier for that self-assessment. This is what the self-assessment, and I'll tell you where to go like here later for this. This is an I forgot that I put this in here. This is a self-assessment tool that you can self-assess yourself to see how well you are doing in these areas. So you can look at it and see, am I actually doing good in collaboration within my classroom? So I'll show you where the website for this is later, and go through this and look and see how well you end up scoring on these sections for yourself. Because if you notice, all you have to do is check it, and then it gives you the little instructions there of what each one of these mean, and then you can score and see how well you do in each section. So now let's look at section 2, which is assessment, and it's using multiple sources of information to develop a comprehensive understanding of a student's strengths and needs, interpreting and communicating assessment information with stakeholders to collaborate, design, and implement educational programs. I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about that one in the next few years. And then using student assessment data, analyzing instructional practices, and making necessary adjustments that improve student outcome. Now, once again, it has an assessment domain section on that self-assessment for you to see, am I meeting all of these needs in that area? Now, section 3, the social emotional behavior high leverage practices. Here is the self-assessment part for it. Are you meeting those social, emotional, and behavioral practices? Because I would dare say that all of us have been in that area and in that part, in that section where we have a student with a behavior that is not meeting our needs, right? Well, this is one of those times where we want to find out what can we do to help that behavior change within our class. And a student with a special need, even a student without a special need, I'm gonna just be blunt and cut dry here. A behavior is there, not because a student is bad. A behavior is there because something is going on. So we have to find what is going on to be able to change the behavior. Once we find and figure out the mystery, then the behavior changes. So sometimes these types of assessments are what helps us find and be the detective that we need to be to find how we can change those behaviors. So if you'll go to the next one, Ashley. So section 4 is instruction. This is going to be the largest one because that's basically everything that we do. We're looking at long and short-term goals. We're looking at designing instruction. We're looking at curriculum tasks and materials, and then teaching cognitive and metacognitive strategies to support learning and taking that to an independence level. And then we're going to provide scaffolded support, explicit instruction, using flexible grouping, use strategies to promote active student engagement. And then we're going to use assistive and instructional technologies. We're going to provide intensive intervention using data-based individualization. And then we're going to teach students to maintain and generalize new learning across time and settings, and providing positive and constructive feedback. Now, can everybody just go, whew, yeah, Lee, that is a lot, right? Here's your self-assessment again. But go to the next one because I have a question on it for us. Let me just ask you a question. Did any of those practices surprise you as a teacher? Did any of them stick out? Were any of them just so outlandish that you thought, oh my goodness, they're asking us to do that? High leverage practices in an inclusive classroom is not something that is just so outrageous. They're all something, exactly. They're already something that you do. It's just who knew what we called it, right? We just didn't know that we were already doing something that is research-based in our classroom. And we sometimes have things going on in our classroom, like I talked about the behavior just a moment ago, that we have things to help back up what we need to be doing at other times. We already have the answers to it. And I think that's what this book is about. I told you I was going to tell you about the self-assessment. On the last slide of my presentation, I put some resources for you. And the Cedar Foundation project are the people that have a website that is just for high leverage practices. And I put that website link on that last page. And they have videos for some that give examples of some of these practices. They have the first edition of this book. There's 2 now. The first edition, they have a link to it for free. I have it on the last page for you. And then they have the self-assessment tool. And so that you can look at that, and I have that on the last page for you. But all of these things are for us to look and see that none of these are strange and outlandish things. They're things we're basically already doing. But when we use them and how we use them is what's going to make such a big difference. So if you'll go to the next one, Ashley. We're going to look at some of them. So differentiated instruction, that's not a new term for us. That's something that we've been doing. But what is differentiated instruction? It's something that when we look at our different student levels in our classroom, we have to meet each one of those level needs. We have to teach to every one of those. How are we going to do that? You know, I made some suggestions here, or some suggestions that different places and books and resources made to me. And that was, if you're early childhood, then you probably do this well with your centers or your learning stations. This one gave me the idea of doing online ones, because a lot of times my daughter teaches in a special ed classroom, and she was at a 1 to 15 classroom. And so a large amount of her students were nonverbal. And so you had to find out whether or not they were gaining the knowledge that they needed to meet the goal without writing and without talking. Now that becomes a task. And I'm going to take a curve for a moment, and then we'll curve back into this, but it goes along with what I'm just saying there, is when I go to my students, I ask my students, I'm like, how many of you in here are going to be special ed teachers? And out of 20, 2 of them will raise their hand. And I'm like, okay, how many of you are going to be a teacher in here? Well, and then, you know, the 18 others, or all 20 of them, might raise their hand. And I'm like, that right there is how many of you are going to be a special ed teacher. Because there is not one of us as a general ed teacher that is not going to have a child in our class with special needs. And that right there is without the inclusive classroom coming into effect now, like we have. Right now in our state, we have, you know, the inclusive classroom coming into effect, to where we're going to be seeing, I keep referring to my daughter, I'm sorry, but she's just my best example right now. But her job this coming year is she's going to be going into classrooms, and she's going to be a resource teacher going into the classroom with students. And so it's a perfect example of that differentiated instruction, of seeing and showing, okay, we're giving students what they need right where they need it, and we're understanding that as teachers. So the thing we have to do is go back to that first thing we talked about, is having that positive attitude. Because I worked with a lady that she absolutely refused to have another adult in her room. And that hurts my heart, because we can't be petty to the place to where we refuse someone to be in the room to do what's best for a child. Because that's why we became a teacher, was to do what's best for a child, not what's best for us. If we're so insecure with what we're doing, then we need to have someone come in and help us to build us up and make us feel better about ourselves, so that we can become that better teacher. Now, another way we can go through with differentiated instruction says, while we're on the topic, can you explain the difference, in your professional opinion, the difference between co-taught and the inclusive setting? Yes, I can. Co-taught is actually when the 2 teachers are going to be teaching a subject matter, like in front of the students. They're both going to be teaching in front of the classroom. They're both involved in the actual instruction, to where, like, going back to my daughter, where she is going to be in the inclusive classroom, she'll never be up in front of the classroom. She will be moving around, helping students, almost like an intervention type. So Did that hit it, Miss Sherry? I saw you commenting on it. Would that be the best way to explain it?
Yes, Brandy, I think that was a good explanation. I was just going to say too that I think it looks a little bit different between your K-5 and then your upper grades. As
Yeah.
a co-teacher in the math classroom, I did do a lot of instruction in the beginning. So we would actually have, you know, some days I did the instruction, some days the regular teacher did the instruction. So I think it looks different. Pushing in like your daughter is doing, yes, that's more of doing the interventions in the classroom. So I think that was perfect definition.
Do you think that that's according to the place also? Or do you think that that's?
I do. I think sometimes in districts, we see that there are regular teachers or special education teachers that have trouble in the beginning with co-teaching. Co-teaching takes time and it takes a little bit of selflessness on both parties' part. Regular teachers sometimes don't want to give up ownership of their classroom, which I completely understood. But then I also went into that as the special education teacher, knowing that I was in somebody else's room, but I also could teach the curriculum. And so we learned to balance it really well. I do think it looks a little different in the younger grades, and some of those kids are going to need the more intensive instruction from the special education teacher personally. And so you do more either station teaching or one-on-one.
Yes, like our small group, like you said, station teaching, or a small group or one-on-one. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Someone was asking here too, about do you consider inclusion to be a setting or a spectrum of services? Do you want to say something on that?
I can.
This
I
is
think
her expertise. So this is her expertise. So that's why I'm letting her. Go ahead.
Do think it is a setting. So when you're looking at the least restrictive environment, complete regular class is the least restrictive environment for those students. We know that that's not an ideal placement for every student. So when you're looking at the continuum, when you're looking at the amount of time from the special education teacher that student will receive, then that's where that continuum comes in. And so in the district that I taught in last, most of my inclusion kids were considered 100% in the regular education on the continuum. And then the amount of services they received were indirect from me, if that answers your question.
Allison, did that help?
Yes, there's just been kind of some back and forth. So my understanding and some fellow colleagues that are SPED teachers understanding is that inclusion is not the same and doesn't always necessarily mean co-taught. Inclusion can mean that they're in the regular ed setting, they're getting that regular ed content instruction, but like Sherry said a minute ago, we have other students that full inclusion where they're indirect is not for everyone. Co-taught is not for everyone. Some of those students need a more intensive setting where it kind of refers back to the resource learning setting, if they're not eligible for alternative assessment, DLM stuff.
Right. Yes.
There's just been a lot of, and of course, with the law changing, it's kind of starting to hammer down even more on our fellow SPED teachers that I know from administrator standpoints, where they just are kind of approaching the inclusion law that everybody needs to be in the co-taught setting. And we're going to do away completely with that additional, more intensive supportive learning environment, such as a resource setting. And so I've just wanted to get some more outside of my bubble expertise opinions, because to me, my understanding is inclusion doesn't mean co-taught. They're not interchangeable. They're completely separate.
Right. And
Um,
I know that in Conway School District, when we were talking about the student going into the regular classroom where there was a co-teacher, we identified that on the IEP as co-teaching. So we moved away from using the term inclusion because
mhm.
we all know inclusive education or inclusion can mean
So many
many,
different things. Yes.
yeah, so many different things. So, and to your point, I don't believe, and if we look at stuff from the Arkansas State Department on inclusion, I don't think resource services are going away completely. I think they will call it differently, but there are still going to be kids in that are being co-taught with two teachers in a room that are going to need those intensive interventions. And that
Right.
won't always be available right there. Now, can we say we're pulling them to the resource room for 50 minutes? I think the verbiage and the way that's going to
Yeah.
look will change, but I don't think we'll do away with those intensive interventions for those kids that need it.
If either of you have a link where that's referred in the law,
Yes.
if y'all don't mind, I can put my email on here, or if y'all don't mind to link it in the chat, that would be so helpful to have as a resource, because I've tried to find it myself and there's so many different things out there. I appreciate y'all's input. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
No,
I told you I'm fine with that. So that's what we're here for.
Well, and
Thank
Brandy,
you
thank
so
you for
much.
letting me interrupt.
No,
know,
I'm
co-teach, yeah, co-teaching is my passion. So feel free to message me your email and I will see what I can dig up for you. And then Brandy, I'll share
Okay.
that with you as well. If you have
Okay,
other,
that'd be
if other
awesome.
questions.
Thank you.
Great.
Brandy,
Wonderful.
this is Renee. Do you mind if I chime in as well?
No, you go right ahead.
I'm Renee Calhoun, and I'm director of the UCA Mashburn Center for Learning, and I work in the same department as the ladies who have been speaking. And I just wanted to share that one of the things that we do is we provide evidence-based methodologies that are focusing on inclusive practices for public schools. So if you're interested in learning more about inclusive practices, we would love for you to reach out to us at the Mashburn Center. But I was just thinking as I was hearing everyone talk, and Sherry, you said this and someone else did too, inclusive practices encompasses so many different strategies, methodologies, settings. It's more of a philosophy, and co-teaching is one inclusive practice. And one of the things that we do from the Mashburn Center is we work in public schools to help support co-teaching as one inclusive practice, meaning that there are many other ways that we meet the needs of all students using, like explicit instruction, differentiation. I mean, there's so many different practices that we can use to support an inclusive environment so all students' needs are met, and co-teaching being one of those. So just wanted to chime in and say, if you're interested in services with inclusive practices, professional development, coaching, co-teaching being one of those, that's what we do from the Mashburn Center's point of view. And we are currently the department's point for co-teaching. So when schools are contacting them for this upcoming school year, and they're wanting support in inclusive practices and specifically co-teaching, they are being referred to the Mashburn Center for Learning at UCA in the Elementary Literacy and Special Education Department. So just wanted to throw that out there as the conversation was taking place. Thank you, Brandy.
You are welcome.
Thank
Ashley,
you
did
so
you
much.
make the
That
link?
was very helpful.
You're
Good.
welcome. Ashley, did you make the link available for the PowerPoint?
I have not.
Okay, but you're going to?
Yes, I will. Since my screen's full screen, I don't have access to it right now, but I will.
Okay.
And I can send out an email of the presentation after it's all done.
All right. All right. So we went through differentiated instruction. So if you'll go to the next one for us, it's going to show us a picture. Oh, it was asking what that fell under, which is instruction. Now, I was talking about my daughter with her students that are nonverbal, and it was just talking about how differentiated instruction could be, and because I'm not familiar with like where everyone in our workshop is, if they're general ed, special ed, someone could be a music teacher, an art teacher. I know when I took my students in kindergarten to like the art teacher, she was art and music for both of us, but you know, she had to always have all of the same verbiage, have all of the same things that we did in our class, so that my special needs children would react to her, because if she said something different, then they wouldn't respond to her. And I remember one day that one of my students, had a fit because she didn't do that one particular thing that she was supposed to do. And when I told her what it was like, it just snapped, you know. So we have to make sure that we communicate these little things like this to these extras like this. And it just takes communication. Sometimes, yes, it's tedious. Sometimes, yes, it's hard, but it's very important, because if we just give these little pictures that we use like this in our classroom, it makes the world of difference. And to be honest, guys, it makes our life easier, because they're not coming back to us flustered. They're not coming back to us having a fit. They're not coming back to us not focused. So it makes our life easier if we just take that second to give them what help they need. All right, you can go to the next one. So I just put this in here. I'm really sure that most of y'all know what a learning station is, but I just put it in here just in case someone didn't. So you can go ahead and go to the next one. So I did want to give us an example though of like if we use this in a learning station. So we're going to look at a learning station and say that the goal of this learning station is going to be identifying character development. So how can we do that in a learning station? Well, we can provide a graphic organizer to organize details about the character in the story. So by doing this, we're giving the student ownership, and that's giving them their voice and choice. Well, how are we doing that? Because some students, they're going to be writing sentences in that graphic organizer. Some of them are going to be writing phrases. Some of them are going to be writing words. And you know what? Some of those students that can't even write that, they're going to be drawing the characters. One of my students, she had been nonverbal until this incident. And when I told her mom about it, she cried for 20 minutes because it was the first time that she had spoken an entire sentence. And it was over her drawing a picture for me. And she told, I could look at the picture. She was so vivid in drawing her picture that I could tell exactly what was going on in it. And she had drawn a picture of me crying because the day before she had broken something of mine throwing a fit because she didn't want to do her work. And so she came in first thing the next morning, went to the dry erase board, and she starts drawing a picture of me with these big, huge blue tears coming down my face. And so I asked her, "Is that me?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Am I crying?" "Yes." So then I said, "Why?" And so then she proceeded to tell me that Walthall cry because I broke letters. And when I told her mom that, she just busted out crying because that was the first time she had ever put that many words together to make a sentence. And it all just came from the fact that I gave her her place for a voice and choice. And I didn't say, okay, I can only grade you this way. Because if I said, oh, it's sentence time, you can only write it with a capital letter at the beginning. It has to be 5 words with a period at the end. that was the greatest accomplishment she had made that whole 9 weeks. And she was, 6 years old and had never put a sentence together. That was much more important than anything that she had done. But it's because I gave it to her at her level instead of trying to make her be something that she wasn't. I hope that that makes sense. But with the goal in mind, have the student decide how they can express their voice. Some of them, they're nonverbal. They're going to need a tech tool where they can punch on it. And when they say, instead of her saying yes, then what they're going to do is touch yes on the tech tool, and it will do the talking for them. So then we already talked about drawing the pictures. And so I think the biggest thing to remember is that we always, I'm sure all of us have heard about the different tiers. Then we need to remember, if we're going to do intervention in tiers, then we need to make sure that we're teaching in those tiers also, because we need to have progress going at all time in all of those tiers. All right, we can switch to the next one. So this would be, we just went through this basic example when I was talking about doing, like if we took an essay, starting it off with fragments, run-ons, even pictures, we can begin the writing process in so many different ways besides just thinking that there's one way to do it. So take that process out. Instead of saying, oh, it has to be 5 sentences. What about if we started off with colors, where you just have, red, green, and yellow, and those are your subject, your verb, and that's it. And then if you have anything else that you want to add to it, and just get them to be able to communicate verbally what you're doing, but you're putting that together with them and understanding and getting that process there. And then from there, you're building something else on top of it, and building something else on top of it, where you're constantly seeing that process grow until one day they are actually doing that big, huge writing process. I think sometimes we as teachers see that 0 to 100 and we want to jump that far. And we have to remember, we got to start from 0. And sometimes they're not ready for 1. We have to go to that 0.001. And that's okay. All right, next one. So this is just giving you an idea about using a choice board, because some children, being on all their different levels, it's telling them how they can choose. I'm going to tell on my daughter for a minute. I'm sure some of you on here might know her, so don't tell her I told on her. When she was little, she always wanted to pick what she wore. Well, I had this little rule that I wasn't letting her walk out of the house looking tacky. So when I would pick out what she was going to wear, she would throw a fit. No, I'm not wearing that, because she didn't pick it out. So I came up with this brilliant idea that I would hang the outfits that I wanted her to wear together on hangers in her closet. And I would tell her, you go get a hanger, and you get to pick out what outfit you're going to wear. And that's what she would do. So she would go get a hanger, and she would be happy because she picked out the outfit. But I would be happy because I picked out the outfit together, and it all looked great together. That's what a choice board basically is that a student is picking out something that they can do. And some of them aren't always work, but they're always something that is helping them. But when you accomplish everything on the choice board, guess what it always comes back to? It always comes back to what you need them to do. It's just like my students in kindergarten. They never knew that they were working fine motor when we were cutting out things and when we were coloring things, because most of the time we were working those fine motor skills. They would pick up beads for me, and they thought that was the most fun they'd ever had. They had no clue I was working them. So that's the idea of a choice board. If you'll go to the next one. It just, and you can go these are just the examples that go with it. So y'all can read those. Here's what I wanted us to see. So if you'll see that, oh, go back one. I wanted us to look at the board. There we go. So if you'll see that the student gets to pick how they're going to, what they're going to do, like if it's their learning center, how they're going to present their goal for the day. And so they get to pick what they're going to do for that day. And notice it all, you may say, well, working on writing their name, they need that down. Well, they may not be in the mood for that today. So a matching game may be appropriate, and that may be what they want to do today. So letting them pick what they want to do gives them their choice and their voice. But all of these on this paper is going to be something that is beneficial for that child. So next one, please. Now we're in collaborative learning, which if you'll click it one more time, it's going to tell us what section that was under, which is number 1. Why do you think collaboration was number 1? Anybody got any ideas about that?
Maybe so everyone's on the same page and it's planned out and using the same vocabulary and terms and.
Yes. Very much so. Because did you notice that instruction was last? Because we have to be able to collaborate together and work together as a team before anything else happens. So how many of us, though, that's our favorite thing to do? How many of us normally like to shut our door and do our own thing in our classroom? Yes, I think you're exactly right. She said, I think students tend to bounce ideas off each other and learn more that way. I think you're exactly right, because I think that they have grown up having to do that because we've become in education. We've come through that, making them work in groups, making them do group projects, making them work together. But as teachers, like we talked about with that self-assessment earlier, we're saying, do as I say, not as I do. So we need to make sure that we're doing exactly what we're making them do. And we need to collaborate with each other, because one of the greatest things that I think we did at our school when I worked there was getting the kindergarten and the first grade teachers together for us to see the transition that needed to be made from those kindergarten students to first grade, because there was a huge gap happening and we didn't know why. Well, guess what? When we got together and talked about it, we understood, because they were assuming we were doing something and we were assuming they were doing something. So just that collaboration together in a lot of different areas can really do a lot for the general ed teacher, to a SPED teacher, to an art teacher, to a music teacher. Oh my goodness, to the librarian. We don't want to forget them. To the nurse, to the office, anybody in the school. And let's not forget the parent. So all of that is collaborative learning, collaborative working together. And it's not just the students learning, it's our learning too. Because like you said, I think we're good at giving collaborative work and learning with our students, but I think that it's harder for us as teachers to work together sometimes. Okay, next one, please. Here is a group project that I just thought was really neat, and it's called the Classroom Challenge, and it helps teachers do just that, is challenge their classroom. These are all pre-made, and of course you can see they look like little envelopes, and it's put on the wall. And then there's 20 hidden activities in there, and each activity takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And you get to pick when you want to do it, or, you know, when you have some extra time or something like that. If you'll go to the next page, it'll give us some examples. So here you have the little folders down there, and it says, you know, these are the kind of prompts you might find. You know, if you have some extra time or is that a reward, you know, you can write a thank you card for someone you appreciate. Talk for 1 minute to a partner about a topic that the teacher gives you. Write a top 10 list on the topic of your choice. Or you're stuck on a deserted island and pick one book, one movie, and one other item to bring. Or the teacher has a game of 20 questions with your partner. Now, these are going to be things that you're doing with partners for that collaborative work. You're helping with these, and you're learning about each other, because the more you learn about each other, the closer you get and the easier it is to learn from each other. That's why I always try to start off every class that I teach by telling my class about me, because it's easier for them to take my word for things and to listen to me if they know who I am. That's why I tried to start off today with telling you a little bit about me, because that means that you can kind of take what I'm saying and know a little bit about me. All right. So now you're going to click a few times because I kind of put some things on here. You can use it as a reward, a fun Friday. Use it at the first of the year to get to know everybody. Or, hey, we all get done with the lesson a little early and have some spare time. Use it then. So now we're at explicit instruction. Recorded demonstrations. This was the neatest thing I saw. I go out and watch and supervise lessons of students, and one of my interns blew me away. He had done a quiz for his students on something he had taught the last time I was there, and so I watched them take this quiz before I watched him teach another lesson. So when the kids were taking the quiz on their Chromebook, he did it in Google. And when the students at the end of the quiz, let's say there were 10 questions on it. However, as I say, you had to have a 70 to pass. Well, if they made a 60 or below, then each one of the ones that they missed, they had to go back and watch a video explaining why they missed that question. It just looped them straight to it, and he created a video for every one of the questions, and it would loop them around and tell them and explain step by step why they missed it, and then it would make them go back and retake the quiz until they made a passing score. And I thought, wow, think about, some of us can hear it one time and it's in there. Some of us can hear it twice. Some of us need to see it. But think about how that would be just one-on-one, and that child could listen to it and watch it as many times as they needed to get it in there. Because some of us, I mean, I have to hear it, see it, almost taste it, touch it, all that good stuff before I get it. And so for those students to be able to get that, it just really meant a lot that he went through that to make sure that all of his students got that extra to make sure that they got it. Well, that goes along with interactive lessons as well. We had smart boards at in the classrooms that I taught in, and my students used to love to go up and be able to touch things on the board and move them to different places. And so we would have pictures, and we would have different letters up there, and they would have to move the pictures to the different letters. And I think sometimes that, you know, we get sick of technology because it's so overbearing, but then we forget sometimes that technology is a grand thing and can be so tactile for some of these students that need it. And that we need to remember that just by using something like that can help with their learning process very much. You'll go to the next one. This is an example for any of you that were interested in the recorded lessons. This is how to use, this is a resource of how to make these videos and tutorials. So I just put a video in there for you if you're interested in that. And when you click this to go forward, it's going to start playing. So you're going to have to click and click over it so it'll stop playing. So now we're going to go to scaffolded support. So what do you think of as scaffolded support in your classroom? Anyone think they have scaffolded support in their classroom, or what do you do as scaffolded support in your classroom? What does scaffolded mean? You can go ahead and bring it up. Scaffolded is like what we talked about earlier, is just meeting the students where they are and what they need. Because I need something different than my husband needs when we're learning. I'm a very visual person. I'm a very, I have to touch it, hear it, see it. I need all of those. And he doesn't. You tell it to him one time and it's done. It's especially that way with numbers. Someone can tell him a phone number and he repeats it right back. Me, I can't do that. I have to write it down, hear it, But that's because we all have those different ways and the different things that we need. So giving scaffolded support to students is that we are going to right where they need, and we're not always giving them the answer, but we're giving them enough support that they're able to figure out the answer themselves. So we're sharing digital graphic organizers. We're giving them diagrams, charts, anything that can help them figure out what the answer this could be. So if you want to go to the next one. Here are some different ideas. If we go back to that writing, the essay example that I did earlier, here's some visual aids, and each one of them is kind of laid out differently because each one of us or each one of the students might need they're at a different place of writing. So this may look different for each one. So in A, you see that you have your topic in the middle, and then you're writing, 3 things about the topic. And that's where the student is at. In B, you're going to see that the student would begin listing facts about the 3 items with your topic at the top. Okay, if you'll go to the next one. And then here on C, you see that it's a little bit more developed because the student would write an introduction sentence and then tell the topic up in the triangle there. And then they're going to write the 3 facts about it in the body. And then they're going to rewrite the introduction for the conclusion. So you can see that all of these are meeting the same goal. They have a main topic, 3 facts about the main topic, so that they have the goal of pre-writing an essay. But all of these graphic organizers look different because we are scaffolding and giving scaffold support right where each one of these students need. All right, now I think I can hear someone out there saying, oh my goodness, but that's so much work. Why can't I just copy off one of those and give it to everybody? That's so much work having to do, that for each different student. That is why when in my math, I had small groups. In reading, I had small groups, because that way each one of my groups had different, they had the same goal, but we met that goal a different way. And Is it more work than being able to do one every way? Yeah, it is. But my students are getting what they need at their level. And if I want to be the best teacher that I can be, and I want to give them what they need, then that's what it's going to require. So next slide. Formative assessment. These, I want us to start thinking about formative assessment as being things that is more than just read the 5 questions at the end of the chapter and answer them. And that's how we find out if they know them or not. Because what if they can't read them? But if you ask them the question, they know all the answers. What if you have them do something different? These are all things that we have to realize are just as important because we're meeting them and scaffolding them where they're at. So let's start thinking of exit tickets that would make it quicker. We have a better view of where they are, everyone in our class at all times. We have more proof because we're progress monitoring, seeing that our students are making progress along the way instead of just each chapter. And we can even have think, pair, share with each of our different people because they're constantly being able to share. We take each group and we can see, okay, is this group getting it or is this group getting it, because we're listening. All right. So formative assessment does not have to be a dirty word. It can be something that we're constantly doing that becomes such a habit that we keep up with it. And it gives us something that we can utilize to show progress. All right, next one, please. I saw this and laughed out loud. I don't know if I have anybody that is a Ryan Gosling fan, but I was looking for something the other day, a meme, and when it said, "Hey girl, I will think, pair, share with you," I just laughed out loud. So since we just talked about think, pair, share, this is going to be my think, pair, share partner. Okay, so y'all can't have me. Yeah, I would totally take him as my partner. Me too. All right, next one. So now that positive behavioral supports, these are some different ways to just encourage that positive behavior. And so we have digital badges, and there's some that like on Class Dojo with the little monsters and things like that, but some don't need digital. Some need that tactile, hands-on type stuff. So I'm going to show you an example of that here in just a moment. But the biggest and the best positive behavior support is consistent routine. Now, when I had the little girl that I talked about earlier, we would always had a consistent routine. When we walked through the door, we did the same thing every single day. And we would go to the carpet, and if we had anything different to do after that, we didn't go from the table to wherever. We always went to the carpet. And once we went to the carpet, then I could tell her, okay, we're going to go down the hall to, do something different. But if we didn't go to that carpet, then it was over. We might as well just send her home for the day, because her behavior was just over because we had taken her out of her routine. Because she had to have that routine for her to feel safe, for her to feel like she knew what was going on. And if I took that away from her, then she was no longer a participant in our learning and what we are doing. So as a teacher, just being consistent in our routines and making those and making sure that our students feel safe in the routine is one of the greatest and biggest positive things that we can do for our students. So that's also an easy one. So here is our badge example. Here's just some things. If you'll go to the next one, I think it shows a picture of the first one. Yeah, here it says that you can copy these. You see the little pictures, and it tells you that you can just pick any pictures and then you name them and what they're for. Now, you can make this where everybody knows what they're for, or you can individualize this. This is depending upon kind of what, if it's like what behavior it's for or something, you can make it a whole classroom thing. Or, why I say that is because I had a student that was blurting out. And so we had our own little plan. I had to put a behavior plan in place. And so we had one like this, but nobody knew what it was about because this was our secret type thing. And so I couldn't put up there that, he was getting in trouble because he got a monster or got a little whatever that little top thing is. Looks like a little spider amoeba or something. But so it just depends on what you're utilizing it for. So go to the next one and but you see that the child has the card here, the badge sheet, and every time that they meet a certain goal or accomplish something, then they receive one of the badges that they've done or accomplished this. So like I said, this can be a whole class event, or this can just be a personal thing that you do with one or two students. But remember that it always needs to be something that they can accomplish. And it always needs to be something that, what boy is going to want Barbie stickers? Always make sure that it's something that is going to engage them and that they're going to want to be a part of. All right, next one, please. This is the one that I said we were going to kind of just move and jump over, because in everything that we've done, it says universal design for learning, multiple means of representation. Have we not already talked about how many different ways of presenting things to people? How many different ways of learning? All of us learn in different ways. Multiple means of engagement. Do we not just talk about, different ways to engage students, making sure that we all learn in different ways and making sure that we all give it to them in different ways. So we kind of already hit on this, just a different way. Like we kind of said at the beginning, we already do this. It's just this has a name to it. So this is the name to what we're already doing, universal design for learning. All right, next one. So by doing what we're doing, by how a child learns, there was a theorist named Howard Gardner, and this is what he said. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. Now, what do you think about that as a teacher? I had a teacher that I worked with, and she had a little boy in her class with autism. And, I think it makes a lot of sense. But she had this child in her class, and she came down to me and asked me what she should do. Well, I told her the very same that I just told you about routine and doing all that. Her answer to me, no, he's in my class. He'll learn to do what I do in my class, or he'll just have to learn to do what we do in my class. So once again, if they can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. Some of us do that naturally, but some of us don't. Some of us, like the girl that I worked with, she wanted it her way. She wanted everything. She already had everything lined out, and she didn't want to change anything because that took work. And she wanted anybody to adapt to what she already had designed. And so we just have to make sure that, like we talked about from the very beginning, that our goal is always the student, and that we always remember that. All right, next slide, please. So technology integration, this can be so many things. We've already talked today about, using the tool for talking. We've already talked about the Chromebooks. So here are some different apps that you can use. I just finished teaching a graduate literacy class, and I made them give their opinion on some different chapters by using Flip. It's not Flipgrid anymore. It's just Flip. And so they had to give me their opinion on different things on Flip. And then you can do Quizlet and Kahoot. The kids love Kahoot, but you have the interactive whiteboards. So you have all kinds of different educational apps that you can use with technology. Now, I have heard a lot of teachers that have kind of pulled back a little bit on technology because so many of them are required to do so much with technology now. I know that they have a reading program, a math program, and so they have so much they have to do on there that they kind of pulled back a little bit. But I want you to realize that just make sure that if you have a child with special needs, just make sure that you always go back to that quote where it says, are we teaching them where they need it? Because if they need this technology device, then we don't need to say they've had it too much. We need to say we're going to get whatever they need. All right. Yes, Blooket and GimKit, and I saw some put Edpuzzle on there earlier. I love all those too. Yes, Blooket is awesome. All right, so next one. This is our last one, and I'm always a big pusher for making sure that everything that you do as a teacher that you reflect upon. And why in the world would I want to reflect upon it? Because you want to write down and remember, did what I do work? And why did it work? And who did it work for? And why did it not work for this person? Because just because it didn't work for you this year doesn't mean it's not going to work for you next year, because you're going to have different children. I always kept a folder for each one of my units that I did, and I always wrote notes for each year of why it worked, why it didn't work, because every year I was going to have different students. And if I had students like the year it worked, then I could do it. If I had students for the year it didn't work, then I need to probably skip that. But it always gave me an idea, because I'll tell you one thing, I was never going to remember without writing it down. So always, and don't wait till the beginning of the year. The best advice that we all need to give each other, and the best advice is to help each other remember. I know we're tired. I know we want to go home, but in May, at the end of the year, make sure you take time to have a reflective practice. Remember, what did you do good this year? What didn't go very well this year? So that you can look at it the next year and know, here's what I need to change this year. Here's what I need to do better, or here's what was awesome and I need to do again. So make sure that you take the time to do a digital journal, even if it's just a Google Doc, and just be able to keep up with what you're learning as a team, as an individual, whichever it is. And then have those collaborative times for feedback sessions so that you can talk to your peers, you can talk to other people, you can talk to, I always had a girlfriend that we were in grad school together, and we would video conference, and she would come into my classroom and read books and stuff from the smart board. And so we can always have different feedback like that from other places and help. So that's what we're here for too. So if ever you need any of us, you've already seen 3 of us on here today from UCA. So feel free to contact us at any time. Okay, so now our next page. So now we're going to, I don't know if we're just going to skip that because it was on my computer bringing it up. I'm not going to be able to try to get it up on this one. We'll just ask this. Do you feel like any of that changed from when you took it on the first time? I asked you, did you feel more comfortable about the high leverage practices? Because at the beginning, you know, We didn't know what they were possibly, but after reading them and going through them, we said we really were already doing most of these. Do you feel more comfortable now? Feeling like, hey, I feel better now because somebody threw these words out here at me and I didn't know what they were, but now I feel like I've got a little bit under my belt. I feel more comfortable because honestly, you've already been doing them. You just needed to know how to put them together. All right, so can you go to the next one? Here is my information. That's my email. Please email me at any time if you need anything. And if I can't answer your question, I promise you that I will find someone who can and get them in touch with you. And then if you'll go one more page, there is the resources I was talking about. The top one is that first edition of that book. And it, like I said, that's the free one. And then you have that self-assessment. And this is the CEDAR resources I was talking about. They have all kinds of resources on that page. Then, like I said, they have the videos and all kinds of things on there. So wonderful, wonderful resource to look at through there. So now I'm just going to end it there with the information part and just ask if any of you have anything you want to talk about, questions, anything like that.